Hello and welcome to part 5 of What If Subaru Had a Stand. I'll be covering the events of Arc 5 in this video. So, we cut back to where it left off. There was a 1 year time skip from where Subaru was officially dubbed Amelia's Knight. During this 1 year time skip, Subaru would learn how to master his abilities of this innate world that he's gotten, such as his authority of sloth, his spirits, the first three, and his stand. But Subaru's magic is still limited, as he mostly focused on the other aspects of his abilities. He can still use basic magic though. When Subaru made the construct with Beatrice, Beatrice lost the ability to drain mana from everybody. She can only draw mana from Subaru now. So, if Subaru uses too much magic, there won't be enough for Beatrice to sustain herself for a while. So, it's kind of a last resort thing for Subaru. Yeah. So, let's get back to the story. It would be an ordinary day at the mansion until a visitor would arrive. He would go by the name of Joshua. As he met up with the main cast, he would reveal that he was Julius's younger brother, and he came bearing a message to the Amelia camp. He claimed that there was a guy in the city of Priestella that had crystals that could benefit Amelia with her situation of trying to find a crystal for a puck to Restein. Amelia would be delighted at this news, as the other people at the mansion would also be happy. These people would be Subaru, Otto, Garfield, Beatrice, Rem, and Roswell. But for the main cast that was going to the land of Priestella, it would be Subaru, Amelia, Otto, Garfield, and as they would make their way to the land of Priestella, Subaru would question what the land of Priestella was like. Amelia would reply that it was a city on the water, the Watergate city, Priestella, and it was very unique for its different style. Subaru would later find out that the style they spoke of was akin to Japanese or something. It's Japanese something, guys. Finally, the group would make their way into Priestella. There they would meet up with Anastasia, the one who has invited them and the other royal candidates to attend. But only a few would show. Or rather, a few would be invited. These invitees would be Crochet, Felt, and Amelia, as the Amelia group would be the latest to show up. They would enjoy the night, as they had plans of tomorrow. They were gonna meet up with the dealer of the crystals that could restore Puck's living conditions. Eventually, the next day would arrive, so a little group of the Amelia camp would go and claim the crystal, which would be Subaru, Beatrice, Amelia, and Otto. They would make their way out, but shortly Subaru would recognize somebody he hasn't seen in a very long time. This would be Bandit number one. Subaru would be surprised as he questioned why he was here. The bandit would be shocked to see Subaru again. He would claim that he was underneath the felt camp, which Subaru had hard to believe. But eventually, he would prove himself by calling forth Reinhardt, which was Felt's knight. So that would be enough for the group to believe this thug, or used to be thug. They would make their way over to the trading spot, but on their way, they would notice a crowd of people gathering around this what appears to be a little girl in stature singing a gorgeous song. They would be drawn in by this. After enjoying this song, Super realized the singing was great, but what were the lyrics? So they were very questionable. Subaru would call out what she was singing, as the lyrics didn't make any sense. Suddenly, the entire crowd would go silent. They would look at Subaru. They would be offended, as why was this person literally insulting their singer, the songstress? They would begin throwing trash at Subaru, since they did not like what he had to say. But the songstress would step down, trying to convey her message that she did not want violence over a simple misunderstanding, right? As the songstress would come over to Subaru, instantly she would recognize it was Subaru, the little girl user. Subaru, hearing his nickname, would be in awe as he wanted to clarify that that was not his nickname and he did not want to be called by that. But the songstress kept on calling him the little girl user. This would, to be to Subaru's horror, he would need to rename himself because he did not know who gave him the title of a little girl user. As Beatrice would well be over 400 years old in Subaru's mind, even though she did appear to be a lolly. But in the crowd, they would recognize a familiar face, one of the royal candidates. This would be Pristella. She would call out that the songstress was quite amusing as she needed her to join her camp. The songstress humbly denied this offer as she sang for the Watergate City Pristella. Pristella? Yeah. And that's where she belonged. Pristella would accept this answer. Subaru would be surprised as last he saw her. That was not the type of decision she would make. But some character development had occurred within our young maiden. That sounded a little bit awkward, sorry. So the group would break up, and one of them would, yeah, a couple of them would go out looking for the dealer. But not for just the crystals they need to rescue Puck for. This would be Otto, as he would carry forward by himself, as the rest of the group would rather stay by the songstress, as this was quite amusing to them. As they would briefly chat it up, the songstress would suggest that Subaru would go get them some drinks, as they were getting direly thirsty. Subaru would reply that he might as well get snacks for that too. So off Subaru went. He went looking for some desirables, some munchies. But on the way, he noticed another crowd of people was forming around the tower, and when he gazed upon them, he saw what appears to be a woman wrapped in bandages head to toe, wearing what appears to be a witch's coat um hood something, or like whatever they wear. This person would call herself the Sin Archbishop of Wrath. She would continue on blabbering about some nonsense. Subaru didn't think this was really a Sin Archbishop, as why would they make their presence as public as can be? So Subaru went along with this, making the people speak up, as soon the people doubted this Sin Archbishop was actually a Sin Archbishop. Then, suddenly, the Sin Archbishop of Wrath would pull out a little boy, and she would proclaim that he was Lucifer, not Lucifer, bro, Lucian. Yeah, I'm just gonna call that little boy Lucian, and Wrath would proceed to drop Lucian on off the tower, but everybody would start clapping as their eyes were glowing red. They were underneath Wrath's authority, the witch factor, as the little boy Lucian would face his demise, as his face would be crushed in suddenly. Everybody in the crowd would suffer the same results. Subaru would open his eyes again, back at the Sontrix that requesting for snacks. Subaru knew somehow he died, and the witch and Wrath was definitely a real Sin Archbishop. As Subaru was locked in, Beatrice would scream out in pain as Subaru unconsciously squeezed his hand really tight around hers. Subaru would apologize for this, and then he would carry forth on his plans to get snacks. But Beatrice would soon meet up with him, as Beatrice grown to know Subaru well over the past year. Beatrice knew something was up, so the two would make their way forward. But Beatrice wasn't the only one knowing Subaru. Amelia would reveal herself, asking Subaru not to keep secrets, because Amelia also knew something was up with Subaru. Subaru would eventually tell Amelia that he suspects a Sin Archbishop was inside of the Watergate City Priestella, and his allies would believe him, as Subaru has previously been a reliable source for predicting the unknown. So the trio would approach where the crowd was firing. Subaru would tell the two girls that he was gonna make his way up there. He would withdraw in his invisible providence. He would be riding it up from the backside of the tower, trying to catch Wrath off guard. There, Subaru would spot Lucian. He would still be tied up in some spiky chains. Subaru would withdraw his stand, Cosmic Embrace. He would unleash the boy from his chains, but Lucian would refuse, as he had been threatened by the Sin Archbishop of Wrath that if he were to escape, his little friend would suffer the same price, and it would be revealed that Wrath had a second girl, being a lolly, that Lucian quite frankly adored. Subaru, taking his advice, would look for this said lolly. Meanwhile, Amelia would make her move on the ground, summoning a ginormous ice crystal and instantly crushing Wrath, or what was soon to appear. The crowd would be in awe as they just saw a random spiritual user crush this supporter, this talkative person. Beatrice would calm down the crowd, revealing the person up there was actually a Sin Archbishop of the witches' cult. They would be relieved. But eventually, Reinhardt would catch wind of what was happening. He would shortly accompany them, as Reinhard could not let a Sin Archbishop roam free in the land of Priestella. Reinhardt, soon spotting Wrath, would confront her. Meanwhile, Subaru would still be looking for the lolly. Eventually, Subaru would find this person, taking them both taking both of the children outside the tower. But to the children's horror, Subaru would just jump off of the tower. Subaru would say it would be alright. Subaru would once again use his invisible providence to catch them before the fall. These little children would be in shock, but they would still accept this, as what else were they gonna do? Die. Reinhardt would quickly overpower Wrath, but Wrath would reply with her hypnotism of her authority, connecting everybody together. The crowd would bear the damage of what was ever inflicted onto Wrath. Unknowingly, Amelia Beatrice would gaze upon Wrath's effects. Subaru would also fall under these effects. Reinhardt, seeing that Wrath was open, would make his move, slashing her clean in half. To Reinhardt's horror, he would watch as everybody was swiftly cut in half. He would see the life fade out of all these innocent people, being horrible as he would watch his allies die. Subaru would once again open his eyes, realizing the authority that Wrath holds was quite a powerful one, being able to link the pain of others to herself and across just other people. This time, explaining the situation to his friends Amelia, Beatrice, and the songstress. He would call out for Reinhardt sooner. Then Subaru would suggest a plan to Reinhardt. He would explain that Rath's authority allows her to connect the pain of others to each other, putting them under a hypnotism. And if they were underneath the hypnotism, they would suffer the same damage that was inflicted on Wrath herself. Reinhardt wouldn't question how Subaru gained this knowledge. Then Subaru would offer himself to rescue the two kids in captivity by Wrath, once again climbing the tower with his invisible providence, still finding the two kids with his cosmic embrace, retrieving them just like in the previous loop. This time, when Reinhardt went to defeat Wrath, he purposely holded back as he suspected that Wrath's damage would be inflicted on everybody else. So instead, Wrath would seemingly make her escape, as Reinhardt was powerless to actually do anything against her without risking the lives of all the civilians. Subaru would be relieved that Wrath vanished into the crowd, but before he knew it, a person with a white hair would appear. He would call himself the Synod Bishop of Greed, Regulus Cornelius. He would soon capture Amelia, as he would dub her newlywed wife. Subaru, not liking that a single bit, would withdraw his stand, doing a mini barrage on Regulus, but to his shock, no damage seemed to affect Regulus. Seeing this, Reinhardt would try to make his move against Regulus. He would question if this was a time that he may use the legendary sword, but when he tried to withdraw it, it was still withheld in his sheath. As Reinhardt would try his best greed or Regulus, nothing would seem to affect him. Not even not even with all the power Reinhardt held, Regulus seemed to be invulnerable to all of it. And also Amelia would be too for some reason. Even with overlapping. Yeah, Regulus could seemingly overlap his authority of invincibility with Amelia, and so Regulus would take leave with Amelia, retreating to his headquarters. Eventually, the remaining members of the Amelia camp would meet up back at the place. Otto would be successful in retrieving the crystals that was necessary to provide, uh, yeah, to restore Puck's connection with Amelia. But they had bigger issues. Amelia was captured. That's when they would hear an announcement throughout a media that basically functioned like an intercom. This would be another Synod bishop. They would be demanding three things: the tome of wisdom, an artificial spirit, and the witch's remains. She would specify this would be the witch of pride. Or at least I think it was, guys. Eventually, the people, the main cast, along with the other royal selection members and their groups, would form a plan. They needed to reclaim the the captured places of Bristella, as they were gonna split up into various groups to try to reclaim the stolen areas by the Synod bishops. First, Subaru and Cruchet would confront the Synod bishop responsible for the announcement, and other various groups would be searching for the remaining Synod bishops Wrath, Greed, and later on to be discovered the Gluttony twins. But I'll just be covering over the events of Subaru's interactions, as the other battles would practically play out the same, as Subaru didn't really have an interference with them. So if you watch the anime, you would understand how the other battles would go. But quit the yap, we're gonna go back to Subaru facing off against Lust. As Subaru and Crochet would make their appearance at the intercom place, they would be confronted by what appears to be a dragon. This dragon would call herself the Sin Archbishop of Lust, Capella, but they would just refer to her as Lust. As why not, guys? They would soon engage the battle. Subaru would be a lot more powerful, but Crochet would be heavily nerfed, but still be capable of fighting off too. So they would indeed try to defeat said dragon. But when Subaru cast his invisible providence in a hope to strangle the creature, he would be surprised as the creature showed no signs of oxygen deprivation or any other physical things. So Subaru decided to get up nice and personal with a dagger he created. He would decide to stab at the dragon repeatedly. But to his surprise, all the wounds that he's made would quickly be healed up. Eventually, the Synod bishop in dragon form would grow tired of this, sneaking away. But Subaru and Crochet would continue forward within the tower, as they thought there might be remaining civilians that were captured in said tower when the lust took over. As they made their way in, they would see a little girl tied up. Subaru would uncover her mouth and ask her where the rest of the people were. She would point towards a door. Subaru would open it, only to see massive flies covering the room. This would disturb Subaru. As he turned around, the little girl would peel off her face, transforming into the Saint Archbishop of Lust, or at least in her human form. Lust would quickly engage Subaru and Crochet. Subaru, knowing this, would use his cosmic embrace to form a whip energy of a whip to crush the lust faced in. But Lust would simply just regenerate that his parents' wound. So Subaru, realizing this, he would try to suffocate her in his energy constructs that he would just make it like a liquidish type thing, trapping her encased. Lust would respond to this by shapeshifting herself into many rats that would quickly devour this um jello-like thingy, quickly escaping and reforming into Lust. Subaru, realizing this wouldn't really affect Lust, he would decide maybe he would outbeat her, out heal her, out beat her up, but on the point which her healing could restore. So deciding to get up and personal would also he would also create an energy whip, pulling her in, only to unleash a barrage at her. Capella would suffer immense damage as her arms and her legs were managed to get severely injured, with barely hanging on. Capella would be surprised by Subaru's immense strength when she appeared. But these injuries were easily healable up. Quickly, Capella, or Lust, would shapeshift herself again, taking the form of dragon, lizard-like legs with wings and a tail. This form would be hypersonic. Yeah, she would be faster. Not hypersonic levels, just a lot quicker. And quickly blitz Crochet and Subaru. Subaru would be in awe as Crochet was quickly overpowered, and Crochet would helplessly be laying on the floor defeated. That's when Lust would pour out her own blood onto Crochet. She would call this Dragon's Blood, a similar curse that would have immense disruption in whoever's body it was ingested in, as it was really bad. Subaru would keep his mind calm as he needed to focus and try to figure out a way to defeat Lust. Then Subaru would decide that he needed to destroy her brain, as maybe that would be a way. Maybe she couldn't quite heal that injury, Subaru thought. So he would catch Shamak, making Lust's senses completely off order. Then Subaru would come with another barrage, but this time immensely focusing on her cranium. Her cranium would be reduced to shreds. Subaru thought he managed to kill her, but Lust would reveal she actually thought about Subaru trying to destroy her brain, so she created a second brain, which she would make travel her conscious there, and then Subaru would be caught off guard as Lust would take out one of Subaru's legs. This would hinder Subaru's abilities to fight. Trying to focus on defense now, his barriers would be much stronger than previously. Capella couldn't quite break through the barriers, but would simply just take a form of Amelia. Subaru would be surprised. He would almost lower his guards, but he did know that this was still the Archbishop of Lust. But this Amelia Lust Amelia would quickly taunt Subaru over again. Eventually, Subaru would have enough with this and try to dash towards Crochet and get the both of them out of there. But with the absence of his right leg or left leg, he would be in a hindrance, as even his invisible providence had its limits. As Subaru would feel a slight discomfort. Well, not slight, but still a reasonable discomfort, as he still had severe drawbacks, as he had previously used this ability many times. So Capella would quickly pour dragon's blood onto Subaru's leg, and this would deeply hurt Subaru. But by the time suddenly the water gates would break, and an immense flood of water would emerge. The last thing Lust would do in that moment would knock Subaru and Crochet into the water, seeing if they would simply drown to death. Little did Lust know, Garfield was quickly around the corner, watching Subaru fall into the water. He would need to save him. So, diving down after Subaru, he would manage to rescue him. He would also notice Crochet was down there too, bringing the both of them back up to land. But Subaru would be unconscious, as the dragon blood had its side effects as well. Crochet would be carried back over to the camp. By the time Subaru awakened, he would realize his leg that had been chopped off before is somehow healed up, but veinier than ever before, with a disturbing look to it. Subaru would question this, but before him would be Priestalin. No, I'm talking about the Royal Canada member. If you guys know, if you don't know what I'm talking about, the Priestella. No, that's a city, right, guys? Anyway, this person would definitely look at Subaru's disturbing leg and quickly stab a blade into it. To Subaru's horror, he wouldn't feel much pain there. When the knife was removed, his leg would heal it up. Pristalin would quickly do the same to another part of Subaru, realizing his leg now had the innate ability to recover itself in that specific area. Subaru would simply just accept this. Subaru would send out his spirits, the lesser spirits, to try to find Amelia and gather information about it. So Little Dipper and Flugel would go out looking for Amelia. Subaru would keep one for himself. This would be Little Dipper. I think, did I just say Little Dipper was going out? I don't think I did, but anyways, Little Dipper would be the one staying with Subaru. As Little Dipper could use Subaru could make Little Dipper like use fire magic. Yeah, So Subaru had a little bit of fire magic through Little Dipper. On their way back, Subaru and Priestelin they would encounter what appears to be an egg-like embryo just laying everywhere. Subaru would grow curious about this, making Subaru would break this with his cosmic embrace, only to see an undeveloped, what appears to be a dummy beast or a mob beast, something similar to that, but it didn't seem to be fully formed. Subaru real would piece together that these embryos or eggs would quickly hatch, re- unleashing these creatures upon them. So Subaru would decide to meet up with the other people. Then there he would see Garfield panicking about a certain somebody. Garfield would explain that him and Teeny, one of the cat girls that was like part of the trio of the other cat girl and their mother who helped defeat the white whale, he would reveal that the one that was accompanying him had severely got a great injury that wouldn't heal up. Wilhelm, overhearing this, would piece together the things, realizing that his dead wife, since only Loki guys, I might have paused when I just explained things. So Garfield would explain to Subaru what happened to Teeny, that she got injured, and then Wilhelm would piece together the pieces, revealing that his dead wife was probably out there being revived and causing chaos in the witch's cult, as the divine protection of the Reaper could inflict an injury that could be unable to heal and would grossly get more disgusted or severely more injured if the target was to approach the user more. So they once again split up into different groups, with the broadcasting area being opened up as the Archbishop has went out to claim a watchtower instead. Subaru would go in there with some of his allies. We would cut over to some civilians that has managed to hide away from the Archbishops. It will be revealed that Wrath's authority was making their living conditions a lot harder, as all the fear, anger, and frustration would be synchronized throughout the entirety of the civilian population, only making them sooner irritable. So Priest Ellen and the Songstrix would give them a visit, as the Songstrix songs could release the effects. But back over to Subaru. He would give a speech throughout the broadcasting system that would revive hope in the villagers. Then Subaru's spirits would return to him with newly gathered information about Amelia's whereabouts. His spirits would relay to him that Amelia has been located in the West Tower with Regulus. They would also tell Subaru that Regulus had many wives, and they suspect that it has something to do with his authority. Subaru, getting this information, would team up with Reinhardt at the time to try and get Amelia back. So off the two would went. We would cut back to Amelia as the wedding was about to occur. Suddenly the door would be blown off its hinges, as the other one would only briefly open up. Regulus would be shocked, and he would proclaim that he doesn't remember inviting any men to the ceremony, proclaiming if they were going to arrive uninvited, at least provide gifts for the newlywed. But Subaru would claim that the wedding was canceled, and Regulus would proceed to roast Subaru, saying that it was understandable for Amelia to choose Reinhardt over him, but not that disgusting bum on the left. Subaru would feel hurted by this and ask Reinhardt not to do nothing, since he did not have a comeback for that. Then Regulus would suddenly take Amelia as a hostage, as he didn't think that it would be very proper to get 2v1. But anyway, he would demand that Reinhardt would have to endure one of his attacks without evading it, blocking it, or anything. Reinhardt would agree to this, as he would know that Amelia would be released by this action. So Regulus would unleash a powerful attack, completely blowing off Reinhardt's legs from his abdomen. Subaru would be in horror as he just saw what he thought was the strongest man die in front of him. But then Reinhardt would simply glow with an innate essence. He would reveal that he had the divine protection of the phoenix that would bring him back to life. He would say it was one-time use, but he would also be inheriting more of them because he's broken like that. This would utterly bewilder Regulus, and Reinhardt would demand that he release his hostage. Regulus, being stunted by this, would proceed to release Amelia, as he quickly approached the two of them with the intent of ending this. Then Nart would suddenly be blown away, as Regulus had used his authority on him, making him crash through several dozen buildings. But Reinhardt was built different, so he instantly came back, continuing their fight. As Regulus and Reinhardt would carry on their battle throughout, Subaru would be strategizing how Regulus' authority must be functioning. He knew the wise were part of it. So as he observed Regulus and Reinhardt's battle, he would quickly shout out to Reinhardt to check if Regulus' heart was beating, as this was his next hunch about Regulus' authority. As Reinhardt would get this message and then proceed to try to stab Regulus in the heart, but he would also feel that his heart wasn't beating. He would send this off to Subaru, but as Reinhardt would do this, Regulus would quickly toss him up into the atmosphere, right towards the moon. Regulus would proclaim that he had defeated Reinhardt, and now he was going to get done with the small fry. Subaru putting the pieces together as he was on the run with Amelia, he would realize that Regulus' authority was already figured out in his mind. So he would make his dramatic statement, claiming that he knew Regulus' authority right to his face. He would say, "It was like pausing time on your own body." Regulus would be shocked. How did this person find out his authority? Subaru would proceed to call his authority by name. It would be Little King's and Lion's Heart. Subaru would ask if that sounded familiar. Regulus' face would crunch up in utter horror and shock and everything. This face would only boost Subaru's confidence about his answer, knowing that Regulus' wives were the key to his power. If he could simply stop their heartbeats, then he would deactivate Regulus's invincibility. He would tell this to Amelia, Amelia being surprised, but otherwise making her way over to the wives. Amelia would try to convince the wives that they needed to temporarily lose their heartbeat as Regulus authority implanted on them. Then his wives, realizing that Regulus has been using them as his source of power, would quickly wanting to stab themselves in the necks with many pieces of shards, trying to commit seppuku, or suicide. Amelia did not want this outcome to be the destined outcome, but all of his wives would try to convince Amelia that that man had it coming, and if their death made Regulus suffer a fraction of what they did, they would happily die for it. But Amelia, with a heavy heart, would decide to do something else. She was going to use a magic that she hadn't used since her childhood. She would order everybody to remain still, as she would use an ice magic. It will use ice in her magic to quickly freeze over every single wife. In turn, the wife's heartbeat would eventually slow down over duration. Subaru, in the meanwhile, would be holding off Regulus by using his authority of sloth to throw around Regulus like a ragdoll. That's when Amelia would meet up back with Subaru, saying that she'd managed to freeze over their Regulus's wives. Subaru, knowing he only had to stall out for a little longer until Regulus became invincible again. He would continue uh, repeatedly using his authority of sloth, invisible providence, to keep ragdolling Regulus around, but the repeated use of the repeated use of invisible providence would greatly damage Subaru, well, physically. So they would go on the run with Amelia freezing over the water and ice skating on it. Regulus finally being released from his ragdoll cycle would chase down them, simply walking on top of the ice, demanding they mustn't play with him anymore, as it wasn't really according to his rights to be thrown around violently by what appeared to be nothing. As Amelia would throw out various attacks at Regulus, trying to determine if anything would actually affect him before his invincibility ran out, nothing would. Then Regulus' authority would finally be deactivated, as he would slip on the ice, falling down. Regulus would be in utter horror as he realized his overwhelming authority was simply just deactivated. He would quickly scramble onto land. He still had his basic authority function. He could still make himself invincible, but only 5 seconds now, or however long he could withstand his own heart stops beating. So Subaru, realizing he was now vulnerable, would try to confront him, but then he would get a message in his mind. He would realize Reinhardt has made his return. But Subaru, wanting to show Regulus a piece of his mind, he would tell Reinhardt that Regulus was now invincible, and he was going to ever beat up Regulus ever so much, and Reinhardt could just do the finishing job. Reinhardt would accept this answer, as it would still take him a while to return to the ground after he's been launched to the moon and simply jumped back to um, the planet where I don't know, is there an official name for the ReZero planet, guys? If there is, then he would be simply launched back to the planet. But then Regulus would panic as he could not do a 2v1 he would not suspect. He would say that sending out your queen or your princess to find your place is quite cowardly, and he would suggest that Subaru would just instead 1v1 him, as he suspected Subaru wasn't that so powerful, as he simply thought as long as he remained invincible during the ragdoll sessions. Subaru would then approach Regulus using an energy whip. Well, actually, he would also have a normal whip, but withdrawing his normal whip, he would draw in Regulus closer to him, instantly hitting them with the aura, with a dorororo, with aurora combo. This would severely leave Regulus beaten up. Regulus wouldn't see this coming, so he wouldn't know to innately use his invincibility. Then Subaru would decide that he was just gonna beat him up with his bare fist, as he did toughen up them, and he would needed that satisfaction of watching that smug bastard get beaten up by his own hands. Regulus, suspecting that Subaru would ragdoll him again, would evacuate would activate his invincibility. But when Subaru proceeded to throw a punch, he would he would break a finger after, because he just punched like a invisible, bruh. He just punched indestructibleness. Subaru being like, ooh, ouch. He would make little good. Wait, actually, he would make one of his spirits. Yeah, he would make Big Dipper, which is a water type spirit, would heal his broken finger easily, as as that Dipper could easily heal small injuries. So then Subaru had enough of this. He proceeded to activate Invisible Providence in three hands this time, grabbing forward Regulus's arms and his legs in told, pinning him against the air itself, unleashing a devastating barrage attacks. Then Regulus would be on the brink of death if it wasn't for another 5 seconds of his own heart being stopped. Regulus would try to flee, but then Subaru would halt the kinetic energy in Regulus's body, making him stand in place. Regulus would have no other choice than to take down Subaru's beating. Then, when Regulus was so close to death this time, when he couldn't activate his invincibility, Subaru decided to end him in the most disrespectful way possible, using his invisible providence to launch him up in the air, making Regulus die to fall damage. Reinhardt, seeing that Regulus had made his way up in the air, would simply land on top of his back. Regulus, seeing Reinhardt there, would be another hoarder, as he thought he had launched him into the absence of space. Then Reinhardt would simply push down Regulus, and Regulus, mere inches away from the ground, would again activate his invincibility. He would crash down through the ground, burying himself in a deep hole, as an invincibility would quickly overtake Regulus's heart, making he could simply not withstand this immense pressure anymore. As then his pit would fill up with water, and he would drown to death, with all the hate in his heart being imagine being incredibly this way. Just like the sloth witch factor, the greed witch factor would transfer over to Subaru, but Subaru wouldn't notice this for quite a while. As the rest of the main cast would meet up after they had successfully defeated the distant archbishops, as I'm not covering the side quest of the other people defeating their thing, since it's literally the exact same as in the anime. And I assume you watch ReZero if you're like listening to my what ifs. But then, after the cleanup would occur, Subaru would see Julius off in the shadows. Being Subaru would ask him what he was doing, as he didn't even feel that disappointed about his loss against Gluttony. But Julius would simply reply that he knows him, and then Amelia would come forward and ask Subaru if this was a friend of him. Subaru would realize Julius had his name eaten. What that means, nobody remembered him except for Subaru because he's like special. And Julius would retain all the memories of himself. So that would bring the end of this video, and it would be really grateful if you like just subscribe or maybe like. Anyways, this will be the temporary end of the series, as Arc 6 is not fully completed, unless you guys want me to make a half video about what we currently have. In the meanwhile, my what ifs will still be ReZero and sometimes ReZero, but I would shift over to more complete stories. Like, maybe I can do some Naruto or MHA what ifs, as those stories are completed, and I could post the entire movie version, just covering the entire what if scenario. So if you guys want one of those what ifs, if you're excited for MHA or Naruto what ifs, then comment that in the bottom. Or if you just want me to stick to some ReZero what ifs, they would be stopped at Arc 5, as the rest of the story I don't know about, since unfortunately I watched the anime. Do not roast me. I know I should probably read the web novel or something like that. Don't flame me for not knowing the baseline of the story. Yeah, I'll probably make more parts of this series once I'm caught up with ReZero. So, bye guys.